Raven can carry the words, "The Queen has fallen." No raven ever came carrying the words, "The Queen is dead." Her son was 3 years old. Her husband had married her for desire. And into that silence, Aegon the Conqueror poured 2 full years of fire. They call it the Dragon's Wrath. Aegon and Visenya, on Balerion and Vhagar, came south not to conquer Dorne but to punish it. And the histories say that in those 2 years, every castle in Dorne burned at least once. Starfall and Skyreach, Ironwood and Vaith, the Hellholt itself. Every seat in the kingdom at least once. Every one, except a single fortress, deliberately spared. And when I tell you which one, you'll see how cold Targaryen fury runs. They spared Sunspear, untouched, immaculate, so that every scorched lord in Dorne would look at the Martell's pristine towers and wonder what price the Yellowtoad's family had secretly paid for them. Fire as a weapon, and mercy as a poison. Dorne's answer wasn't fire. Dorne doesn't have fire. Dorne's answer was a price list. The Dornish put bounties on the conquerors themselves, gold for Targaryen lives, and the knives started coming. It reached King's Landing itself. Aegon and Visenya were attacked in the streets of their own capital, and the king lived because Visenya was faster with Dark Sister than his attackers were with their blades. Out of that night came something that will outlive every dragon in this story. It's why the Kingsguard exists. 7 knights in white cloaks, sworn for life. Visenya's design, built because a war with no battlefields had followed the royal family home. Now do the accounting on the wrath, because the numbers are the point. 2 years, 2 dragons. Every castle in a kingdom burned, and the total quantity of dawn that knelt at the end of it, none. Aegon had answered the war without battles by becoming terror itself. No sieges, no field armies, just fear from the sky, and it bought him nothing but a longer price list on his family's heads. Fire had made 6 kingdoms into 1 realm in 2 years. Aimed at the 7th, fire couldn't even make a widower feel finished. And then, in the 13th year after the conquest, a ship came up from Sunspear under a peace banner. Miriam Martell was dead by then. The Yellow Toad had outlasted the Dragon Queen and died in her own bed, unbowed, just as advertised. Her son, Prince Nymor, ruled Dorne, and it was his daughter, the Princess Daria, who came to King's Landing to face the Conqueror. She brought 2 things. The first came in a crate the size of a wagon, the skull of Meraxes, 3 years a trophy in a Dornish hall, carried up from the deep desert and set down in front of the throne her own fire helped forge. The court read it as a gift of peace, read it the way Dorne meant it. A gift says what a threat cannot. We killed a god, we kept her skull for 3 years, and we can afford to give it back because we do not need the proof. We know how it's done now. That crate was the most polite declaration of capability in Westerosi history. Then Daria spoke her terms, and the room went white. Peace, but not fealty. Not Dorne bending the knee and joining the realm. Peace between 2 sovereign powers, king to prince, equal to equal. The court called it insolence. The lords who had bled in the passes wanted the war pressed until Dorne was ash and obedience. And Aegon, the histories are honest about this, was of a mind to refuse her. Everything we know about the man says he refuses her. He is 3 years into avenging Rhaenys. His wrath burned a kingdom's worth of castles. Conquerors do not make peace as equals with the people who killed their queens. And then Princess Daria produced the second thing she'd brought. A letter, sealed, private, from her father, Prince Nymor, for the king's eyes and no other eyes, ever. Aegon read it there on the Iron Throne, and the accounts agree on the pieces even where they agree on nothing else. As he read, his hand bled. Cut, they say, on the blades of the throne itself, as if the chair were rendering its own verdict. When he finished, he did not speak. He burned the letter. He called for Balerion, flew to Dragonstone that same night alone, and stood the night out. And when he returned the next morning, Aegon the Conqueror, the man who never lost, the man mid-vengeance, the man the whole court had watched ready a refusal, signed the peace. Sovereign to sovereign, Dorne's terms, all of them. No one ever read that letter but the men who wrote and received it. It is the single most consequential document in the history of the 7 kingdoms, and its contents do not exist. The war that killed Meraxes ended not with a battle, not with a dragon, with a page. The only weapon that ever beat Aegon the Conqueror was made of words. Whatever it said, the peace held. Aegon never crossed into Dawn again for the rest of his life. Neither did his dragons. Think about the size of that sentence. Balerion the Black Dread had decades of fire left in him, and the deserts never saw him again. One page bought what the Yellow Toad's whole war was fought for. Dawn, alone of the Seven Kingdoms, stayed free. And here's the proof of how deep that peace ran. A generation later, when outlaws calling themselves the Vulture Kings rose out of the Dornish marches to raid the realm, it wasn't Targaryen dragons that finished them alone. Dornish lords helped hunt them down. The kingdom that had beaten the dragons policed its own rather than break the treaty a dead prince's letter had bought. And stay free Dawn did, for longer than the dragons themselves lasted. Run the clock forward. The last Targaryen dragon died 153 years after the conquest, stunted and sickly, and the age of dragons ended. When the young dragon, King Darren, finally conquered Dawn by sword, with no dragons left alive to help him, he took it in a summer and bled it away again within 4 years, at a cost the histories reckon in tens of thousands of men, as Meria could have told him. Dawn finally joined the realm in the 187th year after the conquest, and not one drop of dragonfire was involved. It came by marriage, twice over. King Darren II had taken a Martell princess, Meraxes, to wife, and the union was sealed when his sister was wed to the Prince of Dawn. Dawn walked into the Seven Kingdoms on its own terms, unburned, unbowed, unbroken, 34 years after the last dragon was already dead. Dragons never conquered Dawn. A wedding did. Meraxes died, proving the first half of that sentence, and House Targaryen spent 177 years failing to disprove it. As for Meraxes, she came home, in the end. The skull Dawn returned went into the Red Keep with the others, and there it stayed. 19 skulls on the walls of the throne room, the greatest of them holding places of honor. Balerion, Vhagar, Meraxes, together again, the way they were over the field of fire. A usurper's servants eventually hauled them all down into the dark beneath the castle, and down there, somewhere in the black, the second dragon of the conquest still sits beside her brother. Her rider never came home at all. There is no tomb for Rhaenys Targaryen, no grave, no bones, no ending. Only a chronicle that couldn't bring itself to write one, and a letter that turned to ash in her husband's hand. The realm kept her name alive the way Westeros always does, by giving it to daughters. 100 years on, another Rhaenys Targaryen carried it on to another dragon, into another war, and into another fire. Names, in this story, are their own kind of prophecy. So tell me below, and I'll be reading every answer. What was in the letter? A dying man's plea? A knife pointed at a little boy, or a queen who was still alive? And the harder question, the one I can't answer for you, if it was the third, did Aegon sign that peace to save Dawn from his fire, or to set Rhaenys free from hers? I'm your maester at the Black Dread, the bones remember.